Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. My name is Jon Troutman. My Twitter handle, if it's anything super annoying or if I offend you, just tweet at me and let me know, I guess. So I'm from Canary, co-founder and design director there. I hope that all of you have heard of us and that the majority of you already have Canary tattoos and stuff like that. For those that are not familiar with Canary yet, to introduce you briefly, we're NYC-based tech and hardware startup. We're building a smart security device that has a camera in it. It has multiple sensors that allow you to track what's going on in your home and get instant real-time information to your home environment through our mobile app. I would love to spend 20 minutes just talking about our product, but actually have a presentation that's more tactical, sort of pulling back the curtain to our design process. So if you want to learn more about the product specifically, I invite you to go to our website. So the title of this tonight is Backwards Product Design. A working title, I guess, first time we do this presentation. Basically what I want to talk about is how our Indiegogo campaign has affected our product design process. It had effects on our process that we didn't anticipate, and I think that over the past few months, as we've been sort of learning how to deal with the complications that come from a successful crowdfunding campaign, it's been really interesting, and I just want to share some of these insights with all of you. So, yeah, you mentioned that we did a campaign on Indiegogo that ended in August, and we had over 7,000 supporters that supported our campaign from 78 different countries around the world, which is really exciting. But it also, with that, comes a lot of feedback and people that are very invested in our product, and therefore it adds complication to the design process. So we're going to go into that. Starting out, I want to talk about what's kind of the basic product design cycle that probably a lot of you are familiar with, either working on a product that you're working on or haven't worked on in the past. So some of this will sound familiar. Usually you start off by sort of identifying the problem and who you're solving it for, and you kind of you want to understand the needs of this person that you're going after and their behaviors, so that you can start to understand what a user needs to do in the product that you're building. And then once you understand that, you can develop a basic feature set or an MVP that you want to build. You want to scope it small so you understand like where you want to start, and so you can then release that and then observe and understand sort of how users are interacting with that MVP, things that you want to do differently, how you can change, how you can improve it, and there's this whole feedback loop that happens there. You iterate and you refine, and then as you add new features to it, you sort of repeat this process. So this is something probably all of you are familiar with. You've probably seen it illustrated like this, maybe like this, or maybe even like this. My plan tonight isn't to introduce another illustration of this, but rather to talk about what happens when you introduce crowdfunding into the mix. The product design cycle really works because it focuses on users. It has this feedback loop built into it. It forces you to keep your scope small and add features very deliberately. But when you add crowdfunding into it, what happens? Well, it introduces a lot of complications. So I want to share kind of what those complications are and how we've been trying to deal with those. So calling it backwards product design because some of the things that you have to deal with when you have once you've done crowdfunding is a little bit backwards to what the process would usually be like. So dividing this into 3 sections, I'm going to talk about how it affects features, how it affects audience, and how it affects feedback. So starting with features. Like I said, when you start off, you want to start off small generally. You want to start off with the basic features that are most valuable, going to add the most value, and are going to be what we call the MVP, and really help people achieve that initial goal that they need to do. This is different than the vision. When you do a crowdfunding campaign, obviously you want to sell the vision, and one of the reasons I think Canary was so successful in our campaign is because we talked about where we're going with this product, what we're building, told a really compelling story of the value that it's going to add into people's lives, and it's very big picture thinking about the vision. Now the challenge with this is when we did our campaign, there was, I guess, 4 of us full-time, and we had a contractor that was working with us. and now there's over 20 of us working on our product. So that means that all the engineers that have come in since then, they came in because they were familiar with the crowdfunding campaign and they saw it from a vision standpoint. They've seen the video and they're very excited about kind of where we're going and where the big roadmap is. And this means that it's easy to come in and not be focused on building the MVP, but rather be so excited about sort of these sexy features that are played up in the press articles and things like that. So the challenge is therefore, like, how do you continue to be looking towards this big vision and focused on what you need to build right now and what's going to be in V1. So again, these sort of brass tacks. One of the ways that we do that, the first thing to do is just be mindful of the difference between those things. But we use some methodologies like card sorting, which maybe some of you all have participated in, where you can have essentially, this doesn't have to be on index cards, but this is one of the ways to do it. And we go through this process where we'll write features that we're considering, or feature requests that are coming in, and all these things on index cards, and then you go through this process saying, well, for our users, like, how would we prioritize those things? What are going to be the most important things? Kind of going from something that a user absolutely needs to be able to do, and then to the other end of the spectrum of, oh, it'd be nice if a user could do this. And maybe this probably sounds super basic, but it's an easy thing to forget to do this, and instead think of this huge product you want to build and this huge problem you're solving. But get the clarity around what we're going to start with and what's most important has been really valuable for our team in keeping us focused on this sort of V1, what we want to build right now. Okay, so next is audience. So whenever you set out, like I mentioned in the initial product design cycle, you always start with knowing who your audience is going to be and knowing who you're going after. So we did that with Canary. Of course, we kind of have an idea of sort of what the big target market is that we're going after, of probably apartment dwellers, people that rent, people that have sort of been left out of the home security equation in the past. And that's sort of the people that we're going after, or that we think we're going after initially, or that we want to go after, I guess, in the long run, but not necessarily who is attracted initially to a crowdfunding campaign. But it's important that you know who you're building for. So some things we did to understand who we're building it for initially and how it compares to who we're building it for in the long run is we tapped into this, we have these 7,000 backers that we're able to reach out to, and we did some surveys and sort of collected information about them demographically, as well as the features that are most important to them. And so that plays into how we sort of rank what we're going to be releasing first. But it's also interesting to point out that, like, when we do those surveys, we recognize that there's sort of a dichotomy or a big difference between, we can segment the users that we're going to have of the people that we sort of were initially thinking that we were going to be attracting, and then those that we didn't expect, and they're maybe the more prevalent in the initial users, but not who we see as our major user base going forward long term. So then what our goal is to kind of find the overlaps between these two groups. So we have our future audience of who we're building it for, and then our initial audience of who's going to use it first. And there's definitely going to be some overlaps of like features that they both want, goals that they have that are the same. And if we can do those things in the middle right, then we can still delight and show the love and please these people that are backing the campaign and excited about our project and most invested in it at this point, but stay focused on kind of where we're going and what we're building for. And so the third thing is feedback. Feedback is such an important part of the product design process of when you release things, you want to get feedback from people, and that's sort of what I would call experiential feedback, where people are actually using your product and they can say, from my experience using this, this is how I want things to be differently, or this is features that are interested in that aren't there, or these are things that are working or are not working. And that's different than this sort of cerebral feedback that you get when someone hasn't used it yet but is invested in it and is excited about it. And those are more just like ideas that people give around it. So you have, and I'll give you an example of that actually. So cerebral feedback, we have one guy who's actually, we're good friends with him now, but he came to us through this campaign, and he's super excited. Like today, no lie, I received 3 emails from him, just with ideas that he has, and he sends these all the time, like, oh, I just thought of another thing that Canary could be used for. And we of course like to hear from everybody. Anytime that someone takes the time to bother to think about your product and send you a tweet or email you, you should value that, and it's actually really cool. But he's like, oh, what if you put it in prisons? This was some of his emails to me today. He's like, you should be in prisons. He's like, this would be great on loading docks. And it's stuff that if we really allowed ourselves to be skewed by this, or to say, oh, that's a good idea, we should, one of our backers wants this, we should go that direction, then you can easily sort of diverge from what your goal really is. And so recognizing sort of the difference between this cerebral feedback, or this feedback that comes from people that are just invested and excited versus people that are actually your alpha testers or your beta testers, is really important to distinguish between. So in our Indiegogo campaign, we had perks that ranged from $200, which was to simply buy a single device, and then all the way up to $8,000, which was our highest perk, and that was to, I guess, that one's you get the first device off the assembly line, and you're going to come out and visit with us and spend time with us at our office in NYC. And that was one of those things, you put it on there to see if someone's actually going to, would even want to do it. And a couple of guys from Virginia actually did purchase that high perk and all the ones in between. And so it's really incredible to see people that invest at this high level. But this sort of quadrant thing here is meant to show that our target audience is really more down in this bottom left quadrant. Where those are the people that are really probably going to, we imagine our users are generally going to spend anywhere from $200 to $500 on our products from maybe 1 or 2 devices. And the people that are spending $8,000 are going to they're super excited about it. They have ideas. They're going to be very engaged, probably really vocal. They're very invested in what we're doing. But that's not necessarily who we're building this for in the long term. So to give another example of that, we had another perk we put up there just to test and see how people would respond to this was a beta testing perk where you could, and that was a $1,000 perk where you could say for $1,000 I'm going to want to be a beta tester. And we had 20 people do this, which is really amazing because these are people that care about what we're doing, want to support us, and support at a high level like that, which is really incredible. And we're starting that beta testing group in February. But one thing that we're planning for, and we know we need to be mindful of, is that the feedback we get from those beta testers is not necessarily, shouldn't necessarily drive the product as much as feedback from people who would be in this group that is the market that we're going after. So it's these sort of complications that when we initially were saying we're going to go in and do this crowdfunding campaign, didn't totally anticipate, but now that we're going through the process, we're realizing that a successful crowdfunding campaign is amazing and awesome, and I don't mean to sound like, oh, it's so unfortunate that we raised $2 million and now it's so hard to do product design. But actually, it really does introduce these complications into the process that we then have to be mindful of and sort of iterate how we work as a team to account for these things. So it's important that we listen to everyone, but that we stay focused on kind of true to our vision and where we're going. So if we were to speak a few months from now, I think if I was to speak on this a few months from now, I think we would even have new insights around these things and learning more because this is really a learning process for us. But that's sort of where we are now and some of the insights we have so far. So thanks for listening to that, and I'm happy to take questions. I'm not sure I understood that question exactly.
So are you planning that, you're going to have so much, it's going to cost you so much money to make however many devices you pose and all those different campaigns.
Right.
And the remainder is what you have left to spend.
Right.
So you're just budgeting that this is what I have for product development at the end, it has to go out.
Yeah,
Planning on raising money? Or?
Right, yeah, sure. I think you hit out in your presentation earlier this idea of that there's a lot of money you have to sort of put down up front to kind of kick off this whole process. And so we're going through all that right now we're actually doing our manufacturing at ODM in China. And And so this sort of the tooling process and all these things, that money that we raised has definitely helped us to be able to do that. We raised a small seed round before we did crowdfunding, and we're looking into doing a Series A to help us continue to build out the team and do that process. Yeah, thanks. You have a question? You have a question there?
Yeah, I was Manoj Shore, Blue Water Labs. I was wondering, actually, just how you came across how you came to be called Canary, what the origin of that was.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it just sounds so pretty, you know. We just want to see. We just want to. There's actually two things to it. One is there's obviously there's some connotations to this idea of canaries. They're sort of a metaphor. They were used in coal mines, you know, that they were a sign of early warning if there was something wrong in the coal mine. The canaries would, I guess, the canaries would die. So. Yeah, but they would warn that there was something wrong in there. But also, I think it does get at this gentle feeling. Like we're going into this market that's very much about like when you see how security companies are traditionally marketing themselves, it's like about being, you know, super secure, like safe, and it's more like it's more like a powerful image. And although like Canary is about protection, it's also meant to be like the heart of your home in a certain way. It's meant to be this gentle presence in your home that you're not scared of. It's not intimidating to have in there, but it's this beautiful thing that that you feel a connection with even on a personal level.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you, Jon Troutman. DIY security has been around for a little while. You know, you can get it now at Best Buy, other places.
Right.
It hasn't seemed to really taken off. What's your thoughts on why now and how you guys differentiate yourselves?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So traditional security before DIY came around is this idea of putting sensors sort of all over the home, and you can call it perimeter security, right? And the DIY solutions that are coming out are really kind of following the same thing. They're just saying, hey, here's a perimeter security kit that you can take and just do it yourself, right? And there's definitely a market for it. There's certain people, it's a smaller market, but there's people that are comfortable taking a box and reading the instructions and figuring out how to install these things. But it's not as big of a market because there's still a lot of complication involved in that. So our take on it is that it's not just about, it's two things. One, it's not just, security isn't just about the perimeter, it's about what's happening inside. So knowing that a window is open on the second floor is actually less important to me than being able to see what's happening and get actual information about what's happening inside the home, not just that something went wrong. So that's one thing. So it's the difference between perimeter security and actually a presence in the home. And then the other thing is just simplicity, right? So Canary, you take it out of the box, you plug it in, connect it to your Wi-Fi, and that's the setup process. And there's no, although a lot of these DIY things are really cool, and like I play with them, and probably a lot of us in this room can fall into that category of hackers and DIY people that would do this. Like my mom's not going to set up a DIY security kit herself. So if someone gets a Canary and they have to call their tech person in the family to help them do it, then we're doing our job wrong.
Before getting to the next question, so you've been very, I really appreciate that you focus your talk on very sort of tactical information, something that, you know, is very educational for the audience, but it's always about the product actually, not the pitch, but, you know, what he does, what's in it. And,
sure. Okay, sure, yeah. So our idea around security, I was getting at this a little bit, is about giving people information about a physical space, right? So Canary, the main job of Canary is to allow people to have information about their home anytime, no matter where they are. And so that information includes video footage. So there's an HD camera in the device with night vision, so you can get live feed of what's happening. There's also a number of different components and sensors in there. So there's a passive infrared motion detection, there's an air quality sensor, temperature sensor, humidity sensor. So all these things combined into this device so that you can actually know exactly what's going on in your home at any point. Canary is triggered by motion as well as triggered by a spike in temperature or things like this, so that you can actually receive alerts on your phone when something is out of the ordinary for your space. And then essentially giving that information to a person and allowing them to be empowered to make a decision as to how to respond to that. So that notification comes, you can see what's going on, you get the sensor readings as well as the live feed, and then you can choose the action you want to take on that. Whether, hey, that's okay, that's just my dog walker coming by, or actually this is emergency, I'm going to call the police, or I'm going to call my neighbor to help take care of it. So it's about giving people information and empowering them to make decisions.
I don't know if that was a long-term plan or something that you guys have now with some concept of machine learning, then
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
figure out whether a specific incident is normal or not normal.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have computer vision specialists and machine learning guys on our team that are working on. So a couple of examples are like identifying the difference between a person in the room versus a pet in the room is a big thing that we're working on right now. So you can get a notification that says two people just walked into the living room, and that's different than a notification that says it looks like your dog's walking around. And you can choose which things you want to be notified about, and which things you're like, oh, that's okay, you don't need to send me a push notification for that. Those are some of the things we're working on in the sort of computer vision area. Yeah.
Yeah, so have you found that people have trouble finding you guys? Because you said Canary is a Google.
Yeah.
Canary.
Yeah, no, that's the challenge, right, with anything. I hope that we can own Canary, and that if anyone says Canary, that they just think of us. I mean, that's what we want. We're going to try to just own that. I mean, we wish we had Canary.com, but some guys on the other side of the world want to charge us like $500 million to buy it. So Canary.is for right now, but.
Are we going to be able to search the video feed? Does the video feed get stored in the cloud? Do you have access to this as a user?
Yeah, it does. It gets stored in the cloud, and the amount of storage that is kept is dependent on whether you're on so we're going to have service plans, whether you're on a free service plan versus a paid service plan that allows you to have maybe a week or a month of footage stored. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi, I was just wondering, so my name is Arash, I work for Rothman. Does this system have the capability to integrate with, let's say, home energy management system? So you have a lot of sensors in there, a lot of information about temperature, humidity and such. Do you have any plans to integrate that with smart meter?
Yeah, great question. The question is, do we plan to integrate with other home automation devices? Is that the idea? Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier, as far as like keeping an eye on what we're initially wanting to do, but still have a vision for where we're going. So in our roadmap, we definitely are considering which devices we want to integrate, how we want to manage that process. And we're looking into the idea of integration, but for initially we're planning on just having it be a standalone device. Part of the reason for that is sort of the story we're telling to the broad consumer base. A lot of people out there are so like home automation and these smart home devices are so new that the I guess normals of the world like aren't looking to do that initially. We want to, rather than tell a story of, oh, you can watch your home and you can connect it through Zigbee and there's Z-Wave integration and these things that, I mention my mom all the time because I think she's a good example of someone that isn't in our world. She wouldn't know what that means, and so to keep our story sort of focused on what's the core value that Canary is going to offer, we're not integrating those things at the beginning, but looking into doing them in the future. Good question.
Yeah, so I'm actually with a company called Normal, which is fine, just mention that word. But this is a related question so far. Are there any platforms that are interesting to you? There's so many in the Internet of Things world. There's so many platforms. There's Wing and Wemo and different things. So there's specific platforms or even an open source platform that's interesting to you. So far, trying to tie these things together.
I'm not on the tech side of Canary, so I think if our CTO is here, he'd probably be like, oh, there's a million things that are interesting to me. I don't really have a good answer for that. I mean, I think there's a lot of amazing things happening. Like I've been playing a lot with, I got a Fitbit recently that I've been playing with, playing with Smart Things, which is a sort of a DIY kit that's out there. And these sort of things, I think a lot of that stuff's really interesting, and we see a tremendous opportunity to kind of be a part of this, these smart devices, even things like Sonos speakers and these other devices that are just not even related to security, but just in the home, or like I mentioned Fitbit because they're gathering information about you. There's just so much data collection that's happening right now, and Canary is specifically related to places, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other sort of integrations or connections that can happen just because it's all about giving people information and then empowering them through that. So,
So these platforms are a little bit you're kind of in that platform, and that's kind of it so far. So I'm very interested from as a person with experience doing things about this. You mentioned about being isolated and kind of doing that thing versus kind of playing bigger world.
Yeah.
I think conceptually it's an interesting
choice to make.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
One last question on the manufacturing process, and the same question as earlier, the team, how many hardware people you have in the team, as opposed to outsourcing, which part of it outsourced, where have you done it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so when we started off, there was 4 of us, well, 5 including our industrial designer who we contracted. And one of those was an embedded systems guy, and I'm a designer, and then our CTO, or our CEO also. So we knew that like a lot of the things that we didn't have expertise in, it wouldn't make sense for us to try to just like, oh, let's be naive and figure it out ourselves. So we started off contracting some electrical engineers and embedded system guys that were actually located in Boston that worked with their former IDEO people that worked with us getting our initial, turning our messy pile of sensor prototypes into something that could fit into our industrial design product. So we worked with them for a while. Now we're in the process of actually, like we're getting 100 perfect prototypes off the manufacturing line. Or I guess not off the line because they're not cool, they're sort of initial prototypes from our manufacturer. Next week they're supposed to come, so that's sort of where we are in that process. And we've been, you know, we're not in, I think you said you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota or something. Yeah, so our guys are in China, so we have to yell at them over the phone, but we're actually looking into having some guys that are actually working over there with the manufacturers full time. So
That will be on payroll, that will be part of it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Lots of stuff going on.
And when is the product actually coming out?
So we're shipping to our Indiegogo backers in May, and then we look, I think, in July is when we're hoping to be in stores or just on the market.
And you could have you can distribute it through a retailer, or?
Yeah, we're figuring that stuff out now. Yeah, there's so many options on how to do that and figuring out what our strategy is going to be. Those are hard decisions to make. That's what we're working on.
Very cool. Thank you very much.